show you how to use a decompressive breath. The best way to do this is with something like foundation training, because you can add that decompression in where you keep your engagement and length. So I'm just going to show the founder that Dr. Goodman teaches. You can even just build that breath here, inhaling, keeping that decompression. And then when you go into the exercise, breathe out, adding a little bit more, deepening the hip hinge as you equally raise the arms, keeping all your length that you're building up. Each time you're inhaling, you're just opening up the joints even more. You should feel that shake. It's going to get harder and harder to breathe. Trying to go through about 10 deep breaths. More and more each time. Filling up your lungs, lengthening the spine, and at the same time strengthening it. Learning to decompress the spine. And eventually steps 1 through 6 are all going to happen at the same time, uniformly pulling the spine apart. Skull lifts, so the tailbone pulls down. But we started from the ground up because generally we were a little weaker in the hip hinge. So once we strengthen that hip hinge, it's going to create a good foundation for the spine. So we'll just be doing some very basic exercises, almost going to look like yoga poses, but it's all about how we progress into that pose and not just the position itself. That's why steps 1 through 6 are so important. So hopefully you can find those videos. I'll link them down below so you can find those on YouTube. Shows you some of the anatomy, what we're dealing with, accessing the posterior chain muscles, the hip hinging muscles, and even the arches of the feet. And then moving into those exercises. We're going to talk about step 7 really quick, and that's breathing, expanding the rib cage. So first we need steps 1 through 6 working for us. We need to get decompressed, and then the breathing actually allows us to hit this area more. So we're breathing from the diaphragm, which everyone's really locked up in here because the diaphragm sitting more under here, you know, right on top of your stomach. And most of us are kind of caved in the chest. Even here, I'm still caved in the chest because we're just bending at the hips to get there. Everybody's calling, now I'm doing a video. So steps 1 through 6 help us lock that in through here. So we're engaged in that diaphragm area. So now when we breathe really expansively, opening up the ribs, now we add more tension right in here. So you should really feel this. I'm feeling it more on one side than the other because we all have imbalances there. The spine likes to turn one way or the other based on, you know, how we're sitting, how we're working one side over the other, even from the hips. So we're stretching those dominant erector muscles by using these deeper little muscles in pink, the big one being the multifidus. Multifidus is important, like we said, because it skips multiple segments. So when they're atrophied, that's where we get the rounding. So when we're engaging, we're pulling all those bones back in place. So when we breathe, the chest comes up and the shoulders drop. Now during the winter, everyone likes to breathe from their shoulders, from their chest, not from the diaphragm. So see the difference here, engaging here with the chest, rising up in through the nose, almost taking in more air than I possibly can, letting out through the mouth. And that's important. When we exhale, we keep the contraction. We're not letting the stomach go out. It's not just this kind of motion, it's keeping that posterior chain activated. Inhale, inhale, adding more tension, more length. Breathing out, keeping that length. So when you take your next breath, you're adding onto what you've already built. You're not going back to, you know, it's not decompression, compression, it's decompression, 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 even more. Right? And step 1 through 6 is really important for that. So 7's not going to work unless you understand the rest. And we'll hit that more. A posture in the park, hopefully you see you there, can't view. Free to anyone. Bring the whole family. Let's strengthen that spine, because once we've taken neurological tension, neurological stress off our spine, everything's going to start working better. Shoulders are going to work better because we're teaching the hips and the shoulders to be isolated when they move, because usually our spine is twisting and rounding to help that shoulder movement. It's giving us false range of motion, if you will.
We tend to think that stress is emotional most of the time, but it could be mechanical as well. We have locked up areas and muscle imbalance that we're talking about. We're dealing with spinal stability. Can't it stress the nervous system? If you're often in pain, are you going to have an emotional response? That's just typical to think about. You know, we have two different parts of our autonomic nervous system, which means they're just automatically happening in the background, doing it on their own. So we have parasympathetic and sympathetic. Often the sympathetic is the fight or flight that we call it. So it's the kind of rounded stoop posture. What we'll see with that, because why? The body's guarding itself because it's protecting its fight or flight. Fast heart rate. Shallow, fast breathing from the chest, tightening up the neck, pulling down the skull. What else do we have? Digestion going out the window. The deep breathing is going out the window. The immune system is going out the window because it's not important at the moment. So we're getting compression of the nervous system in a guarded posture. A lot of us are living in that sympathetic state. So getting into a parasympathetic state is often done by deep breathing. So we're talking about that a lot yesterday. So it's this area of restriction I just see on so many people. The base of the lung, the diaphragm comes in, just sits right here, often locked up. And we see this forward pelvic sway. We can't breathe from our stomach well there. You see my shoulders are doing a lot of the work. So when we get our hips back underneath us, we broaden our chest. We're gonna feel tension here. These are all these restrictions from years of improper breathing, which is leading to improper biomechanics, the way we move. So breathing is often a good way to get your body into check. Get your pinkies here on your pelvis and your thumbs on your ribs, and you're just engaging. You should feel your whole spine kind of decompress and lift. These are decompression breaths we're taking. When we breathe in, we don't let the belly out. We keep it in. Keep that tension we feel in our spine. Now hold that tension as you release the breath. That's hard to do. Breathing in, keeping the tension here. That's going to level your hips with your shoulders. So go do that. Go do some walking. Try to feel the tension in here. Try to get this body decompressed, because when we're leaning back, it's gravity compressing down there. Get the hips underneath us, gives us a chance to lift up. Open up all these joints. Get where the head where it should. Because if your head's back here, it's a lot of tension, extra stress. Base of the neck, right here, base of the skull. Lots of inflammation down here. So it's that little change is going to make a big difference. Little changes have got you into trouble, little changes will get you out of trouble.